All right, welcome back to the MLK Assassination investigation video. This is video number 3, and so we're going to go over the timeline of what happened here. This is a timeline I've been able to put together from various different timelines I've been finding all over the internet. So I scoured the internet, took all the dates and times and put them in. And this is what we come up with. So it says, April 3rd, 1968, King arrives at the Memphis, Tennessee to support striking sanitation workers and checks into the Lorraine Motel. April 4th, 1968, from Memphis, Tennessee television news broadcast an early morning newspaper, the Commercial Appeal. James Earl Ray discovers that Martin Luther King is staying at the Lorraine Motel, room 306. Ray, already in Memphis staying at the New Rebel Motel, discovers that the Bessie Brewer rooming house is adjacent to the Lorraine Motel. He decides to change his location and checks into the Bessie Brewers at 3:30. Ray rents room number 8 under the name John Willard, but asks to change to room 5B, which overlooks the Lorraine Hotel. Ray discovers that the bathroom window has the best direct line of sight to room 306 at the Lorraine. 4 p.m. Ray purchases a pair of binoculars at the York's Arms Company at for $41.55 and returns to his room at the Bessie Brewers to watch for King. So, this is really interesting, I think. If you're... So, supposedly the purpose that Ray assassinated Martin Luther King was to get some kind of reward that I believe the KKK had put up a couple $1,000 or something like that. But it doesn't seem like he prepared very much. Everything happens within, 3 hours of the assassination. So that doesn't seem like much preparedness to me. Now hold on one second. Let me look at something here. So it says here that this is the was the New Rebel Motel in Memphis, Tennessee that he first checked into. So let's see if we can find this hotel. So it says it's the Southeast Motel in Memphis. See if we can get an address on that. Alright, there it is. It's 3466 Lamar. So it's not even downtown. Hold on one second. So it's about 10 miles away. So it's not even close to downtown where he was staying. That seems like New Rebel. Huh. I'm not sure if that's the same spot. But anyway, so it seemed kind of odd that he's waiting to the very last minute to do anything. Also, you see that he spends over $41, okay, to buy a pair of binoculars. You think he would have had a pair of binoculars before? And $41, that's quite a bit of money back then. All right, let's keep going here. It says 5:55. Also, want to put in a little note here that I had heard in the video that when they made the reservation at the Lorraine Hotel, they were assigned a certain room, and then some anonymous person called in and had him change the room. Now, I don't know what the experience was back then, but nowadays, usually, you don't get assigned a room if you make a reservation. They have a space available. Then, once you get there and you check in, from the type of room that you have paid for or reserved, they'll select what they have that's available, because there could be rooms that are being cleaned. There could have been an accident, a plumbing accident in one of the rooms. So if they assign you a room ahead of time, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So I'm not so sure about the veracity of that, what I heard on that. But it could be possible that someone called in and changed it. It was a downstairs room, supposedly, that he had already reserved, and that someone changed it to an upstairs room. So when they got there, it had been changed to that upstairs room. And the reason you would want an upstairs room, because it'd be on the balcony, further away from the cars. It'd be a clearer shot for whoever is going to shoot at him. Now, one thing I want to say about like patsies and scapegoats, that if James Earl Ray, who's not the brightest guy, okay, is being moved around, okay, go here, your assignment is to go there, make sure you get some binoculars. What we're going to do is we're going to want you to keep tabs on what Martin Luther King's entourage is doing, okay? And, that's why he's getting the binoculars. This is what he's saying he was told to do, and then to drop off this bag. And he didn't know what was in the bag. He was given the bag by Raul. This is what he's saying. It seems kind of odd that you would wait to if you're going to assassinate someone, you would wait to the very, very, very last minute. It would almost be easier to get Martin Luther King from either the woods while they're marching from one city to the next, or to get him like from your car. So if Martin Luther King and them, they're going to dinner, you just follow them to dinner, drive by with your car, drive by and park across the street, and then shoot them as they're coming out. But here they have him at the motel, trying to get him right before dark. Okay? And think about it. In April, the sun sets about 6 o'clock. So it's just right before sunset. So he's taking the risk that Martin Luther King may come out in the dark, which doesn't make a lot of sense if you're going to try to assassinate him. Anyway, it says Martin Luther King and Reverend Ralph Abernathy exit their hotel rooms after changing for dinner. The 2+ others on the King staff are to attend dinner at the home of a local minister. Reverend Billy Kyles, emerging out of his room, King lingers on the balcony to talk to his driver, Solomon Jones, in the courtyard below. Before 6 p.m., here we go. So I've combined these timelines, so some of this stuff may repeat. He lingers on the balcony. Let's see, 6:01. King is shot and rushed to St. Joseph Hospital. Martin Luther King is shot and wounded badly. James Earl Ray departs Bessie Brewer's rooming house, abandoning his suitcase and rifle wrapped in green blanket in the doorway of a nearby building, Canopy's Amusement. He is spotted by 2 patrons of Canopy's and by Charles Stevens and William Anschutz, residents of the Bessie Brewer rooming house at 6:03. The shooting is radioed to the police headquarters. Now I want to look at something real quick. Hold on one second. So I just Googled the sunset time, okay, for Memphis, Tennessee on August 4th, 1968 at 6:28. Now that's when the sun completely sets and there's no more sun at all. So we all know that there's a period of about 30 minutes to an hour before sunset. There's less and less sunlight, okay? And think about this. The Lorraine Hotel and the balcony are facing west, okay? The Bessie Brewer, hold on, let's pull this up on a map. Hold on one second. All right. So here is the Lorraine Hotel. Here's the balcony approximately right here. Okay? You see this line. This is the line that they're saying the shot came from. And supposedly James Earl Ray shot from this location here. Okay? So think about that for a moment. And you can even see it in shadows right here. You see, so the shadow here, okay, this is approximately 10 o'clock. You see how the shadow is right here? Because this is south, okay. In April, the sun is at a lower angle, and it's crossed the solar equinox. It's crossed the equator, okay? So it's actually getting a little higher in the northern hemisphere, I guess you could say. So when the sun sets over here, the shadows, you see how the shadows are going this way, approximately 10 o'clock or so? The shadows are going to be facing that way. Now, don't forget, there's another building here, okay? So, if you've got another building here and a building here, and the sun is setting over here, okay, just like with this shadow here, these buildings are going to be casting shadow this way. You see? Like that. So approximately, out to this tree line, there's going to be shadow. So when you're hunting or shooting someone, you don't want them to be in shadow, okay? Which is approximately where Martin Luther King would be. And if it's 6:01, sun sets at 6:29, you've got approximately 28 minutes before it goes completely dark. And I don't mean to sound bad here, but it's much easier to shoot a light-skinned man in light when there's not a lot of light than it is to shoot a dark-skinned man, because when you don't have the light right on his face, okay, it's hard to make out exactly where to aim. So my point basically is, why wait? Why try to shoot Martin Luther King right before the sun goes down when it's getting darker? It's a harder shot, instead of waiting till the morning when there's more light and you're going to have more clearer view to shoot him during the daylight. That's just a point I'm looking at there, but I think it's kind of odd that he's coordinated this entire assassination plot to shoot Martin Luther King, and he waits to the worst optimal time of the day at the very last minute to shoot him. Very strange, I think. Okay, so 6:09, barely alive, King is rushed to St. Joseph Hospital accompanied by Abernathy and escorted by several police on motorcycles. 6:10, the first police dispatch includes a description of the possible shooter as a young white male, dressed believed in late model dress, well dressed, believed in a late model white Mustang going north on Main from the scene of the shooting. So that's what I don't know how they could possibly get out a description. Okay. Because let's see, you got 601. Police are called. It's radioed to the police at 6:03. Now, there was a policeman that arrived within a few minutes after that. So how they could get this description of, James Earl Ray, I'm not sure that quickly. It's almost like the one with Oswald. Anyway, so let me stop here, and we'll pick this up when I continue. Oops, hold on one second. All right. So I think I went over some of this stuff, but I mean, if I repeat stuff, I apologize. I've kind of lost track of where I was last at on these. So it says death threats. As early as the mid-1950s, King had received death threats because of his prominence in the civil rights movement. He confronted the risk of death, including a near-fatal stabbing in 1958, and made its recognition part of his philosophy. He taught that murder could not stop the struggle for equal rights. After the assassination of President Kennedy in 1963, King told his wife, Coretta Scott King, "This is what's going to happen to me. I keep telling you, this is a sick society." All right, hold on one second. And one of the things I don't think people really consider enough is why now? Why April 4th, 1968? Why not kill King back in the 50s? There were plenty of sheriffs, plenty of crooked KKK policemen, KKK-involved governors, district attorneys. They could have silenced and cut him off at the pass at the very beginning. Okay? He was a agitator. He had FBI surveilling him, recording his phone conversations. Why not, destroy his reputation? Supposedly he was sleeping with all these other women. Why not cut off Martin Luther King at the pass, at the very beginning of the 1950s? Surely another civil rights leader would have taken over, but look at what happened since 1968. Not too many prominent people have taken over the leadership role of the civil rights movement like Martin Luther King did and galvanized it. I mean, there's Abernathy and there's Andrew Young, there's Jesse Jackson, but no one had the moral stature that Martin Luther King did. Okay? So why not kill him in the beginning? They could have killed him on the marches to Selma. He's out in the open. There's plenty of woods. There's hardly any police. Okay? They could have killed him on the bridge. They could have killed him in jail. Put him in a cell with, whatever, turn their back and come back the next day and, he got stabbed. Or, he hung himself in jail, right? All these things they could have done. They could have shot him in D.C. while he's making the I Have a Dream speech. There were numerous occasions, they could have killed him before the civil rights legislation. There were numerous occasions for them, the Klan, the racists, the Nazis, to kill Martin Luther King. But why didn't they? I mean, I'm sure they tried. I think they shot, Medgar Evers in his driveway. They shot Malcolm X, in his church. So, if someone wanted to kill Martin Luther King, they had every opportunity to kill him before 1968. So what's so special about April 1968? Okay? And you have to really seriously think about this. They could have easily killed him long before and silenced the entire movement, or gutted the entire movement, because no one, if Martin Luther King was killed in, say, 1963 or 1964 or 1965, no one would have wanted to step in his shoes and take over and risk getting the same fate. But it didn't happen. And again, you have to ask yourself, why? Are the Klan, are the Nazis not capable of murder? Well, yeah, we know they are. And I would submit the reason that King wasn't killed until April 4th of 1968, there are two things, or three things. One, he had been increasingly speaking out against the Vietnam War. And he gave a speech, I believe it's like December 1967, that made him persona non grata in the White House against the Vietnam War. And how the Vietnam War was having such an adverse effect on the African American population. Because approximately 30% of the draftees were African Americans, where African Americans only made up 10 to 15% of the population. So, once he spoke out against that, it's one thing to talk about equal rights and be able to sit at lunch counters and not, be able to vote. Okay, they'll let him have that, right? But it's another thing to fuck with people's money. And this is essentially how the white establishment, the white conservative establishment, saw Martin Luther King change. And now, if he wanted to, he could have come out. The next step would have been to come out and demand that all African Americans resist the draft, don't be drafted. Now you have 30% less troops going into the field. You could almost start a revolution. Okay? So, this was a turning point. Okay, it's one thing to be for civil rights, but now, if you're against the war, and then they already suspected he had communist sympathizers in his organization, okay, this guy's got to go. Just like with JFK, he's, a pacifist, or he's bowing down to the Russians. He's not standing up against them in Cuba. This guy's got to go. Once you come up against a white conservative military-industrial establishment, you got to go. That's it. Another thing that happened was the Tet Offensive. Starting in January, February, that came out. We won. We beat back the communists, but it exposed the lie that we had been winning over the hearts and minds of the Vietnamese, and that we were right around the corner from victory. It exposed the lie so much that Martin Luther King spoke out against it and said, we're no closer, they've been lying to us, we're no closer to victory in Vietnam. We're pressing these people, we're over here fighting for civil rights and for African Americans, and then we're bombing yellow, I guess you could say, Asians, who are fighting for their rights, their national rights. And then, it was so bad that Johnson refused to seek re-election. That was enough. That was the final straw. The assassination put him into power. Whether he was part of that assassination of JFK, who knows? he definitely benefited from it. But I think that was the final straw once he realized that, even Martin Luther King has turned against him again with the war. And it's no surprise that 5 days before Martin Luther King is assassinated, LBJ says he's not going to run again. And then 4 days later, Martin Luther King's assassinated. Anyway, so we'll keep moving along here. So if you think that Martin Luther King was assassinated because he showed up at a sanitation strike, you're not listening, you're not paying attention. Anyway, King traveled to Memphis, Tennessee in support of the striking African American city sanitation workers. The workers have staged a walkout on February 11th, 1968 to protest unequal wages and working conditions imposed by Mayor Henry Loeb. At that time, Memphis paid black workers significantly lower wages than it did white workers. There were no city-issued uniforms, no restrooms, no recognized union, and no grievance procedure for the numerous occasions on which they were underpaid. During Loeb's tenure as mayor, conditions did not significantly improve, and the gruesome February 1968 deaths of the two workers in a garbage compacting truck turned mounting tensions into a strike. So, I just want to jump back in history a little bit. At the end of World War II, before Hitler blew his brains out, they knew the war was over, But instead of releasing the prisoners, the political prisoners, the enemy of the Nazi state, what did Hitler do? As his last gesture of defiance, he ordered the assassination, the murder of all opposition, German people that had been in prison, that had been sitting in prison for years. He murdered all of them right before he killed himself, as a last, symbol of defiance. Well, if they're going to take me down, I'm going to take all these other guys down with him. So this is what we see in this white, conservative, military intelligence, industrial group state that's causing all this chaos in America. They knew their days are numbered, even though they've resurged under Reagan, they resurged under Trump, and they're back. But they're going to take out as many of the opposition as possible. So we see these series of assassinations, of which Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy were not the only ones. And then we saw the resurgence of Nixon and the white suburban Karens of the day, I guess you could say, who ran to Nixon because you got, within a year later, you got Manson. So think about this. You got Martin Luther King assassinated, RFK assassinated, numerous anti-war protesters arrested, numerous anti-war protesting going on all across the country, numerous anti-war protesters fighting against this establishment. And then you got Charles Manson and all his craziness, kidnapping and brainwashing of these white suburban kids. So the effect is that all the little grandmothers, all the little suburban white house liberal-leaning housewives who were supporting the civil rights movement and, all these things, all this is equated to the radicals that are burning down cities, and they all run to Nixon, They run to the conservative side, just like you saw in 2020 when the targets are being burnt down, and then Trump's running around talking about these really bad people. This is what happens you scare the fence sitters into running right, okay? Because it's better to be with the fascist police than with the, anarchist people that are burning down the country, given the choice. All right. So this is what we see, this white conservative, not just Southern, but white conservative military intelligence industrial establishment. They're fighting for what they think is a communist takeover. When they look around, they see the anti-war protests, they see Martin Luther King turning against them. So this is surely has to be some kind of Soviet communist-inspired conspiracy infecting the entire country. So in desperate times, people do desperate things. Okay? People will kill, people will murder, they will look the other way while people kill and murder because they think the ends justify the means. Alright, so we're going to move on. Alright, hold on one second. So I don't know if these FBI memos have anything about the Martin Luther King assassination, but I find it strange that the FBI only has just a few documents on Martin Luther King, which I know there are numerous documents about Martin Luther King. But this is what they put out. So I guess if you don't want to incriminate yourself, you don't put out incriminating documents. Anyway, so this one is, let's see, dated January 31st, 1977. And this is from the Michael Sheehan Office of Professional Responsibility to the Director of the FBI. And basically, he's requesting all documents of the FBI related to Martin Luther King. And then they, writing back, I don't think they're writing back, they send it. So it looks like they put together this report. Oh, this is on the assassination. Okay, good. This will be good. All right. So it says on, hold on one second. All right. So this is William Cornelius Sullivan. He was the head of the domestic division of the FBI. Basically, he's the one that led the campaign, the intimidation campaign against Martin Luther King. And also, whenever we see any type of organization like the Black Panthers, Malcolm X, any organization that the FBI or the white conservative power establishment considered a threat, it was always William Sullivan that was the soldier leading the counterattack, which they call CONTELPRO, against those organizations. He was always the director. I guess you could say he was the director of domestic, investigations or counterintelligence or whatever. But it was, whenever I read through memos, I'm always seeing William Sullivan's name right there. Anyway, so was in charge of the agency's domestic intelligence operations 1961 to 1971, right there. Sullivan was forced out of the FBI at the end of September 1971 due to disagreements with the FBI director, J. Edgar Hoover. The following year, Sullivan was appointed as head of the Justice Department new Office of National Narcotics Intelligence, which he led from June 1973 to July 1973. So that right there, you can see he went from fighting against supposedly domestic enemies in the United States to fighting the drug war. He was one of the first leaders of the soldiers in the drug war. Sullivan died in a hunting accident in 1977. That's really convenient, right before he could testify. His memoir of his 30-year career in the FBI, written with journalist Bill Brown, was published posthumously by the commercial publisher W. W. Norton and Company in 1979. Sullivan led the highly controversial COINTELPRO, aimed at surveilling, infiltrating, discrediting, and disrupting domestic American political organizations which, among other things, assassinated, imprisoned, publicly humiliated, and falsely charged American political opposition and civil rights movements with crimes. So it was not just the FBI going after and keeping intelligence on groups that were committing crimes, like maybe, the Black Panthers or something. They were actually instigating and creating false propaganda and memos against those groups and other people like Martin Luther King that weren't involved in any kind of crimes. They were creating things. Anyway. And you see a lot of these people end up going to George Washington University. I always find that interesting. Alright, so it says William Cornelius Sullivan was born May 12th, 1912 in the small town of Bolton, Massachusetts. His parents were farmers in the areas he worked. A family farmed there for 50 years. Sullivan later recounted that growing up in Bolton was a life without modern conveniences, including public transportation, school buses, telephone, mail services, and even electricity. Sullivan graduated from Hudson High School in neighboring Hudson and held advanced degrees from the American University and George Washington University. Upon graduation, Sullivan worked for a time as an English teacher in Bolton, entering the civil service as an employee of the Internal Revenue Service in the agency's Boston office. So, one thing I've noticed in history, that you have a lot of people who become infamous for their just outrageous public service that the crimes that they committed while in public office, that started off with very lowly type professions like teachers or farmers or whatever. But once they gained that power, especially if they were from modest backgrounds, there seemed to be no end to the amount of crimes that they would commit. And I'm talking like Heinrich Himmler, people in the German Nazi party. One was like a chicken farmer, I believe, and then Goebbels, and he became the head of the Nazi intelligence service, domestic intelligence service. So what happens is with people with very, very little power, okay, and you see this with Trump also, that people who become oppressive dictators and some of the worst people in history like Hitler and Trump and Stalin come from these modest backgrounds, okay, and they come from a persecution type personality where they believe their family or they were persecuted and held back, and then once they gain these positions of power, they go all out to get back, to stick back to society or whatever group they think that's wronged them, whatever perceived wrongs. And you see this in Trump, and what's so scary about the prospect of a second Trump term is that he's openly talking about using and abusing the power of the presidency to exact revenge on those he perceives as persecuting him and wrongly treating him and stuff like that. So that's a whole nother subject, but you see the same mentality, kind of the Hitler mentality, the William Sullivan, even Hoover mentality of a persecution complex in Trump. And you never want to let people like that have any kind of power, because once they get in power, there's no stopping them. Okay? It's very, very difficult to reel them in. So it says, on 3 July 1941, Sullivan received a letter from Federal Bureau of Investigation Hoover offering him a position as a special agent with the FBI, or the Bureau. Anticipating war in Europe, the young Sullivan had been working for the IRS. Prior to taking FBI examination, he reported to the Department of Justice on August 4th of that year for training as an FBI agent. There are two different sorts of agent trainees, Sullivan later recalled. Those who joined the FBI as clerks straight out of high school when they were young, impressionable, and able to be trained to be fanatically loyal to the Bureau and its leaders, and those like Sullivan who had graduated from college and developed a professional skill set before enlisting with the Bureau. And see, he just mentioned something right there. So in a lot of these organizations, whether the FBI or the Nazi Party or the MAGA Trump cult or the MAGA Trump White House, you have two sets of people. You have leaders and then you have followers, fanatical followers, who they get in, they're kind of led into the club, and nothing that they do, they think, is against the law if it serves their group or their leader's purpose. Okay? These are the most dangerous types of people who didn't have power before but now have power, and they're fanatically loyal. Okay, no matter what the leader does, they're always supporting them. You'll see the same thing in Hitler and the Nazi Party to the very end. Okay? This is why all these Nazis had to commit suicide at the end, because they couldn't take the reality that what they had fought and achieved and struggled for was wrong. Completely wrong. But you see this in Sullivan here too. So, let's see. The pressure on a trainee to conform was unremitting. Okay? So, conforming, to fit in. And then there's a lot of group pressure of others not to stand out and to fit in. It says, matter of fact, I was watching this video about this guy, FBI agent Gale, I believe is his name, and how he was a maverick. He didn't fit in very well, but he was fanatical in his pursuit of whatever subject he got onto. And he came across the bin Laden file and became an expert on bin Laden and the Al-Qaeda organization, and was the one that would be pounding the desk at the meetings about bin Laden, bin Laden, bin Laden. And no one would listen to him. They weren't taking him serious. And he was seen as an outsider, a maverick, a troublemaker amongst this group that surrounded Louis Freeh, who were fanatical supporters of Louis Freeh, and they tried to block anyone, okay, any kind of mavericks like this Gale guy from, getting through to Freeh. And you see this with the Nazi Party. This is why, when there were abuses that were going on inside the SA, and people would write letters and say, surely Hitler wouldn't approve of this, and then they would write a letter to Hitler, and then they would find themselves under arrest because there were people that were blocking this information getting to Hitler. Not that he probably would have changed anything. And they used that information to torture people. And you see the same thing going on in other organization cults, like the Jim Jones cult, And what was that other group? This other group, the Dianetics people, Scientology. You know, anyone who, former Scientologist that comes out and speaks out against them, they're constantly all over them, harassing them, all these kinds of things. This group mentality, very, very unhealthy. Sullivan remembered with those questioning FBI policies or violating agency rules quickly funneled out of the system. In addition, ideological homogeneity was reinforced by the universal recruitment of Anglo-Saxon candidates, with African Americans, Jews, and Hispanics excluded for training program as a matter of official policy. Sullivan successfully completed his training and on 26 September 1941 was assigned to the FBI's field office in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. In accordance with the FBI Bureau's policy at the time, Sullivan moved from the field office to field office during his first year of job, being transferred to El Paso when mentored. And another thing, too, is that what they would do is anybody who was a maverick or wasn't like white Anglo-Saxon Protestant that did manage to get into the organization, because there were some Jews and there were some blacks and there were some Catholics in the very beginning that did make it, but they found themselves in isolation. So they would be, you know, in a field office in Wyoming or North Dakota or in the middle of nowhere, New Mexico. Okay. There was another guy like that, I can't remember his name, who was in an office in, was it Albany, Georgia? He was a Catholic. So that's where they sent him. The main office in Georgia would have been in Atlanta, the FBI office, but he was assigned to this field office in Albany, which had like 2 or 3 agents, okay? And the head agent there, knew all the sheriffs, knew all the police chiefs of all the cities and counties in his area, and he would take him out with him and introduce him and stuff like that. Anyway, so there was, and my mind's going blank here, but there was an incident that occurred in Miami in November 1962, or 63, where this guy, old guy from Quitman, Georgia, down near Albany, was in Miami meeting with an undercover Miami agent, I guess, Miami police informant, and they recorded the conversation. And the guy said that Kennedy was going to be killed with a high-powered rifle from a building in a triangulation type fire. And so after Kennedy was killed, this information came out, and so they sent this agent looking for this guy, which I can't remember his name right now. And he went all over the place trying to find him. Actually, no, I think he interviewed him before the assassination. Yeah, he interviewed him before the assassination. And then after the assassination, he was trying to find him. They couldn't. His girlfriend said he was out of town for a couple of days. Finally, about 3 or 4 days later, on Monday or Tuesday after the assassination, he tracks him down. Basically, his girlfriend said he was just there, but now he's on his way to Atlanta. So the guy went up 1941 highway at about 100 miles an hour until he spotted his car, pulled him over, and they brought him in and interviewed him and stuff like that. Anyway, he had realized that the reason they didn't take him serious, his initial report about the guy, they didn't take him serious because the FBI had this culture of only listening to white Anglo-Saxon people inside, you know, the purview of this cult of J. Edgar Hoover. So you had to be close to J. Edgar Hoover to have any kind of effect. Anyway, so we're going to move on to the next section here. And I wanted to say something here because it says an analysis of the vascular injuries and attempted resuscitation surrounding the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. So I wanted to say something about head injuries. Now, if you think about JFK, if he had just been shot through the throat and the last shot from the grassy knoll hadn't occurred, he would have survived. Okay? He would have lived. He got shot in the back, he got shot in the throat, but he would have lived. Martin Luther King was shot in the head. One shot to the side of the head. I think it went into his eye. We're going to find out here. RFK, shot in the back of the head, within 2 inches of the back of his head, even though Sirhan Sirhan was pinned on a table over 3 feet away in front of him. But somehow RFK was shot 2 inches in the back of the head, according to the coroner Noguchi, from the powder burns. And then Noguchi was brought up in charges of incompetency, and they tried to remove him as coroner because his report didn't say what the police wanted them to say, and the district attorney wanted them to present to the jury, but yet they used Noguchi's report on the assassination of RFK in the trial of Sirhan Sirhan, which I find interesting. And, if you go back, you've got Abraham Lincoln shot in the back of the head. No guard there to stop anyone coming into the booth. John Wilkes Booth comes into the back of the head, shoots him with a Derringer right in the back of the head. So you've got all these people that were assassinated. If in the RFK assassination, if Sirhan Sirhan just fired all 8 shots from the tray table, he hit RFK in his body. I think one passed through the coat, one went into his chest or something like that. He would have lived. But somehow he gets shot from the back of his head on the opposite side of where RFK is, or where Sirhan Sirhan is standing. Now, some people say the security guard, Thane Eugene Caesar, shot him, because even Thane Eugene Caesar says he had a hold of RFK's right arm and was guiding him along with the Euchre guy on his left arm. And that is where RFK was hit, was from his back right where Thane Eugene Caesar would have been standing. Now, there are witnesses that said that they saw Thane Eugene Caesar pull his gun. But you know what people usually do? When gunshots go off, they close their eyes, they cover their face, they try to, get away. So no one saw the fatal shot to the back of RFK's head. As a matter of fact, Thane Eugene Caesar was so close to RFK that when RFK got hit and went down, he grabbed Thane Eugene Caesar's tie and held it in his hand as he was on the ground. As a matter of fact, there's a little clip of Thane Eugene Caesar saying that he had to come back later after all the chaos, and he was looking for his tie, which he found on the floor. Okay? Which I find that very interesting. And Thane Eugene Caesar was a complete racist. He worked for, what was that guy? Anyway, the racist governor of Alabama. He voted for him, he said. Anyway, so let's get into this here. It says, abstract Martin Luther King was the most prominent civil rights leader in the United States in the 1960s. He was shot by an assassin in Memphis, Tennessee on April 4, 1968. After the shooting, he was taken to a local hospital where he had successfully been resuscitated from a right... Wait a minute. Hold on. Let me back up here. He was shot by an assassin in Memphis, Tennessee. After the shooting, he was taken to a local hospital where he had an unsuccessful resuscitation from a right clavier artery transection. Despite the fact that the circumstances around the assassination have been frequently reported and reviewed the past 50 years, the specific vascular care of the traumatic injury has not been analyzed. The paper reviews the medical aspects of Martin Luther King's assassination and the management of the subclavial injury. Right, let's take a look at that. I'm not sure what that is. Subclavial artery transection. So let's see what that is. Maybe there's a picture. All right, let's take a look at that. Hold on one second. So that's a good picture. I just can't seem to blow it up where I can actually read it. So that is the artery right there. So I thought he was hit in the head. Huh. So if you damage that, it's going to spew out blood. But I could swear that I read that he was hit in the head. Interesting. All right. So let's see. On April 4th, 1968, Dr. Martin Luther King was shot with a high-powered rifle in Memphis, Tennessee. He was immediately taken to a nearby hospital where he had an unsuccessful resuscitation. The event has been described, but there was not management. He will use this evidence in newspaper articles and the autopsy report, hospital records, and physician eyewitness accounts to reconstruct the assassination and subsequent medical evaluation and treatment, and to discuss medical care he received in the context of his historical and social setting at the time. Let's see. We're going to skip through this. This is when somebody stabbed him in 1955. It says at 6 p.m. on April 4th, King emerged from room 306 at the Lorraine Hotel in Memphis. He was preparing to go to dinner at the home of Minister Samuel B. Kiles. Jesse Jackson, Hosea Williams, Andrew Young, and Ben Branch were in the parking lot of the motel waiting for King and Ralph Abernathy. King bent over the railing to talk to Branch, a musician who was planning to play at the evening's events. King was on the balcony. Kiles was on the balcony with King. Abernathy was still in room 306. At 6:01, just as King was leaning over the railing, he was shot by a .30-06 high-powered rifle. He fell backwards immediately. The bullet entered on the right side of his face. And neck. Well, how can you enter the face and the neck? I guess if you're leaning forward and the bullet. And another thing too, if you think about that, I mean, I hate to be ridiculously detailed. Let's see. Right side of his face and neck. Okay. We'll keep going here because I'm a little confused. So if it entered his face and then went into his neck, it must have passed through his cheekbone or something? Andrew Young was the first individual to attend King. He initially thought King was dead, but felt a pulse as King lay bleeding on the second floor of the balcony. His head was placed on a pillow and his wound was covered with a towel. and a blanket was placed on his torso. He demonstrated some movement of his mouth, but he did not speak after the shooting and quickly lost consciousness. From the time King arrived at Memphis, he was under observation by the Memphis police and the FBI, who were stationed directly across the street at City Fire Station number 2. Several police officers ran across the street from the Lorraine Hotel as soon as they witnessed the shooting. The fire department ambulance 401 was immediately available, and King was loaded into the ambulance at approximately 6:09. As King was placed in the ambulance, he had a mechanical respirator placed on his face in an effort to assist in breathing and positive pressure. The ambulance driver, J.W. Walton, called the dispatcher as they pulled out of the Lorraine Motel parking lot and asked for loop lights, which meant he requested that all traffic lights on the way to the hospital be held in green so he could get there as soon as possible. He was taken to St. Joseph's Hospital, approximately 1.9 miles away in downtown Memphis. The ambulance made a trip in roughly 4 minutes as King arrived at the emergency hospital room at 6:15. All right. Now, these are records from the Shelby County that I'm able to find, and we'll just click through these and see what we can find here. Alright, so these are photos, and we're just randomly going to go through these. I don't have these in any kind of order. So it says this is the rooming house. See if I can blow this up a little more. See, there's the restaurant, and so you see the doorway, and this is supposedly where James Earl Ray left the bag. Now you think about it. Think about it logically. You just assassinated someone. You're trying to escape. You're making your way to your car. Okay? And you're carrying a bag. Do you drop that bag off in front of a doorway so everyone can see you? Or you just keep, walking down the street with your bag? Calmly. That's what I would do. But yet, we have the testimony saying that he dropped it off in the doorway. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Alright, let's take a look here. Here's the Lorraine this is the rooming house. Now his room was on the other side. This is the street side. And again, here are these doorways. Doesn't make very much sense. Ah, there's the rooming house right there. Alright, let's take a look. Next photo. Jimmy Grill's Fine Foods. The Wink apartment room. So you come out of this doorway and you're carrying your bag, and what do? You drop off the bag in the doorway of this grill right there. Doesn't make a lot of sense now, does it? Yeah, and there's a close-up of the exit there. My question is, how far did he have to walk to get to his car? That would be interesting, because why wouldn't you park your car closer? So this is even more interesting. So remember we read that part where they said that he dropped off the bag in front of the Knippy Amusement Company, right in the doorway. Okay? Or by the doorway. And that, so think about this. He had to have gone that way because all the pictures are showing that over here is an open field. You wouldn't be running that way because you'd get caught. So he had to go on that way. So you run out of the rooming house. You move over to where there's this open window here. You drop the bag right there. Another thing that's interesting is that a policeman who was in the area got here within like a couple of minutes. And he said he walked into the doorway, but he never recognized the bag. And then when he came out, that's when he saw the bag was laying there. So that's interesting, I think. So it's all, it's all logistics here. What works, what doesn't work. So if you're going to run that way, why leave the bag there? And how come the bag wasn't there when the policeman entered until he exited? Find all these things very interesting. I watch a lot of these videos and listen to audio files, and then you come together and put it together with the photos and the maps, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. So here we are again. So there's the rooming house. There's the doorway. So he would have come out of the rooming house, dropped the bag here, and then ran off that direction. Doesn't make a lot of sense. So you can see how the photographer, okay, the police photographer, is trying to put the whole scene together too. You see? Very interesting. So right past this sign is an open field. There's the doorway again. And again, the policeman coming from this direction says he went into the Knippy Amusement Company and spoke to some witnesses, and when he came out, that's when he recognized the bag. But see, the witnesses had already seen James Earl Ray run off this way. But it'd be interesting to get witness statements to see if they said anything about a bag being dropped. Don't you think that if a witness, they got 4 witnesses, 5, 6 witnesses seeing him run off in that direction, don't you think they would have seen the bag also? And they would have said, hey, what's in the bag, I wonder? Let's take a look. And then when the police get there, they say, hey, look. They'd all be standing out around this bag saying, hey, look, we found this bag. The guy dropped this bag before he ran off. That's quite interesting. All right. You see how it's open right there? The Lorraine Hotel is right back there. So very interesting. You see, so if you look at it here, the rooms to rent are here. And it's not that window. That window would be on this building over here, which makes it even more strange. So if it's rooms being rented from this building, why would he come up to here, drop off the package there, and then run back that direction? Doesn't make much sense. Let's go back until we can see that other building right next to it. Okay? So let's take a look there. See, they're saying it's this building here. But let's look and see. Are they renting rooms in this building? Yeah, wink. No? See, it's got to be that one. It's the first one. You see? Right by the Canopy Amusement Company. It's the first one, not the second one. But let's take a look at something. Hold on one second. Alright, so again, here we are. So this is the building where the Canopies is at, down here. So it's got to be from right there, because it's there. There's the bathroom. There's the bathroom. You can see the two rooms here, and there's a bathroom. There's a bathroom. And I think they're trying to say it's this one, but that's not where it's at. Let's take a look here. Let's see where they zoom in on the window. See, they're zooming in on this window here, which doesn't see. It's a rooming house rear, but the photos from the other one was saying it was the other building. So why are they? I'm a little confused. Let's take a look here. Rooming house rear. So you see the screen? That screen would have been in the bathroom window. What they're trying to say is that he had popped it out. I wonder what this H means. This is what, an alley or something? Rooming house footprints. Now why would there be footprints? If he's up in the tub, what are they trying to say here? So there's the stairs. Really good photos, though. I mean, I'm really impressed. They really went all out to take the photos here and list them all. Rooming house door. But see, they say that he didn't fire from his room, he fired from the bathroom. There's the rooming house. Let's see if they get to the bathroom. We'll go and we'll stop at the bathroom here. Alright, there's the hallway again. Yeah, I think they're going to go to the bathroom. Yeah, see, there's the bathroom there. Rooming house bathroom. Now, why is there an H? Huh. Maybe H is the initial of the person taking the photos? Not sure. Ah, see, there it is. See, there's the rooming house window. There's the bathtub. So whoever was shooting had to stand in the bathtub, straddle across the bathtub. And I remember them talking about that, whether he was doing it or someone else was doing it. Let's see. Are they going to find footprints? Rooming house bathroom. Wonder how. Is this the next day, I wonder? Surely someone would have come in there and taken photo or taking a bath. There's the window seal. And they're trying to say, see, right, this little mark is where he had put the rifle. Again, so just like it's really weird how these things coincide. So just like with the JFK assassination, okay, you have witnesses, some witnesses saying that they saw the man standing, okay, at the window and firing through the window as it was raised up a little bit. But it's almost impossible to do that because the window, the ledge of the window went down to about just above the knees, around the thigh. So it's impossible for someone to stand and be firing from there. They'd have to be sitting on a box or sitting on their knees to be firing. But yet some of these witnesses says they saw the guy standing. Almost impossible. Let's take a look at one more. Oh, this one's going to give you a view of the Lorraine from the window. Ah, so there you go. That's a good position. But just because you can see the Lorraine doesn't mean that's where he was shot at. Let's take another look here. Alright, so we're going to stop right there. Alright, so Mary Farrell is a really good organization. They got all these documents on the JFK, the RFK, and the MLK assassination, also Watergate and some other stuff. But we're going to read their files on this. It says, the Martin Luther King assassination. The assassination of Martin Luther King was one of the opening acts that plunged 1968 into the year of turmoil, coming on the heads of the Tet Offensive, which showed the war in Vietnam to be in disarray. President Johnson not to seek re-election just 5 days before was itself soon followed by the King's assassination was soon followed by the murder of Robert Kennedy, violence at the Democratic National Convention, and a generally unraveling of the country into a period of violence and despair. Like the other assassinations of the 1960s, the King murder had its lone nut, in this case James Earl Ray, an escaped convict who purchased the rifle found near the assassination scene and was caught in flight 2 months later. But also like the other assassinations, evidence of conspiracy was easily found despite being ignored by the government investigators. It says in the early evening of April 4th, 1968, Martin Luther King was killed by a single shot which struck his face and neck. He was standing on the balcony of the Lorraine Hotel in Memphis, Tennessee, where he had come to lead a peaceful march in support of striking sanitation workers. About an hour later, he was pronounced dead at 7:05 p.m. at St. Joseph Hospital. Shortly after the murder, a bundle was dropped near the door of the Canopy Amusement Company. So that building we saw right there with the big glass windows, it was the Canopy, and then right next to it, it says, was rooms for rent. But apparently it was another building over. So again, it makes you ask, why would the guy run down the stairs, run over to the Canopy, drop the bundle, and then run back past the scene where he was at? Anyway, have been purchased by a Harvey Lohmeyer, which was an alias, it says here. But let's take a look at that name. Huh. Anyway, I'll read this later. Alright, so we'll keep going. It says, pursuit of the white Mustang was thwarted by CB radio transmissions, which describe a high-speed chase between the occupants of a blue Pontiac and the white Mustang, and even describing gunplay between the vehicles. What? These broadcasts appear to have been a hoax or a diversion. The broadcasters of these CB radio transmissions has never been identified. That's interesting. So think about it. If he's in Memphis and he's driving a white Mustang, supposedly leaving the scene of the assassination, he drives all the way back. He goes back to Atlanta, where Martin Luther King lived, and leaves his car there. Then ends up in Canada and London and all this kind of other stuff. So why would it be not difficult for the police to find a white Mustang? I find that interesting. Anyway, it says authorities had little to go on Harvey Lohmeyer. The purchaser of the rifle found in the bundle was described as a white male, 36 years old, 5 foot 8 inches tall, 150 160 pounds, black and dark brown hair. A description fitting many people. The FBI's investigation soon focused on an Eric Galt, a name used on a registration card at the New Rebel Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. So, Eric Galt. Very, very interesting. Now, I saw a video on Eric Galt, and who had been either from Zimbabwe or Rhodesia or South Africa, and he lived either in Toronto. And what they found out is that most of the aliases that I think there was like 5 different aliases that this James Earl Ray, this guy who didn't finish high school, was supposedly an idiot, incompetent, couldn't do anything. The 5 aliases that he had all came from within about a mile or 2 circle of this Galt. So all the aliases were of actual living people in Canada. It's either Quebec or Toronto, I can't remember. But it's just very interesting to me that this loser, nobody, uneducated person could come up with all these different aliens from this neighborhood in Toronto, Canada. And I also find it interesting that the same people involved in the JFK assassination with Clay Shaw were constantly making flights to Canada, either Quebec or Toronto, I believe. And that there was also the possibility of Corsican mafia assassins that were used in the JFK assassination. Anyway, so let's go back to this here. On 19 April, fingerprints on the rifle and other items matched that to James Earl Ray, a fugitive from Missouri State Penitentiary. And again, you would think that, I mean, just thinking logically, you just assassinated Martin Luther King. And what do? You take the rifle that's got your fingerprints on it and all your, I think even had his underwear in there or something like that with some kind of tape, some kind of laundry marking tape, and you dump that in front of the rooming house, in front of a bar where everyone can look through the window and see you, but no one sees you. Okay? And again, why wouldn't you wear gloves? If you're going to assassinate someone and drop the rifle off, why wouldn't you be wearing gloves? Or better yet, take the rifle with you and bury it in the woods somewhere. Or throw it in a river. They got the Mississippi right there. It wouldn't take much. Drive over the Mississippi at night or any river and just throw the rifle. But yet he leaves the rifle with all the incriminating evidence on it. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Plus, he also has in there the binoculars that he had bought earlier that day. Doesn't make a lot of sense. More than a month passed without Ray being located. Finally, on June 1st, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police found a possible photographic match between Ray and a George Raymond Schneid's Canadian passport. So here's another Canadian besides this Galt. And this Ray Schneid lived within just like a mile or so of Galt, which I find interesting. So it's almost like someone who's running intelligence, okay, for the U.S. up in Canada is helping him, assisting him. I mean, how can this loser, nobody, didn't even finish high school, can barely write his own name or much less speak, forged all these, he's had like 3 different passports with different names on them. Very interesting. A week later, on June 8th, Ray was arrested in Heathrow Airport in London, apparently on his way to Rhodesia. Now, Rhodesia is where Galt was from, okay? Which I find very interesting because Galt was a Rhodesian national living in Canada. Just crazy stuff. Anyway, I've watched like thousands of hours of videos of the JFK assassination, the MLK assassination, the RFK assassination, and you get all this information and it rumbles around in the head, and then when you come across stuff, it comes out. Ray was extradited to the U.S. to face trial. He replaced his first attorney, Arthur Haynes, with Percy Foreman, who had represented more than 400 murder case defendants, convinced Ray to plead guilty as the only way to avoid the death penalty. On 10 March 1969, Ray pled guilty to first-degree murder and was sentenced to 99 years in prison. A mini-trial on that day settled a few questions which had arisen during the preceding year, and Ray himself hinted at a conspiracy. So it's interesting that JFK's assassin, he never got a trial because he got assassinated. James Earl Ray, Martin Luther King's assassin, supposedly never had a trial because he confessed, supposedly, on the urging of his attorney. Sirhan did get a trial, okay, but couldn't remember anything and basically confessed to the whole thing because that's what he was told to do. Let's see. And Ray himself hinted at a conspiracy, interrupted proceedings to say that while he agreed to all the stipulations, he did not exactly accept the theories of Mr. Clark, the Attorney General. I mean, on the conspiracy thing, 3 days later, Ray recanted his plea and requested a new trial in 2 letters to Judge Battle. The judge did not act upon these letters and was found dead at his desk of a heart attack 3 weeks later, literally with Ray's appeal under his body Oh my God. Okay, that's quite interesting. So the judge who he had appealed to dies 3 weeks after he convicts him. How convenient. Wow. Hold on a second. So, in all these cases, you find all this just bizarre, weird crap that goes on that today we would be like, what? Yeah. 1969, 31 March, he died. Yeah. So within 3 weeks of Ray's trial, the judge that convicted him, boom, dies with the letters right underneath him. At his desk. There we go. Let's read this article. Oh, very, very small. Very, very tiny. Ah, okay. It says, William Preston, battle. Wow. Judge William Preston Battle, who presided over the controversial two-hour trial, wow, of James Earl Ray, was found dead at his chambers Monday of an apparent heart attack. Battle, 60, was found slumped over his desk by an assistant county attorney general. Battle was catapulted? Should be catapulted to fame by the Ray case. On March 10, Ray pleaded guilty in his courtroom to the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King, and Battle, by pre-agreement, sentenced him to 99 years in prison. Ray has since indicated he would ask for a new trial, but no motion has been filed. Battle was picked by a lot from among 5 Shelby County Criminal Court judges to preside over the Ray trial. He was on the bench for 9 years, and before that he was assistant county attorney and practicing defense attorney for 14 years. Wow. So, again, it's just nothing in this case that isn't bizarre. Okay? Like all these other things. You know, you've got, let me just recap for this video. You've got Ray dropping the bag in front of this bar with this big, huge window, and no one sees him. And then the policeman comes in and interviews the witnesses, and of course, no one is looking at the bag. But they saw him run off, which I find very, very strange. How can you have witnesses that see Ray, 4 to 6 witnesses see Ray run off from the rooming house, but they don't see him drop the bag right in front of the window in front of them? The policeman goes into the bar and then comes out and finds the bag after he's entered the bar, which I find very strange. Ray doesn't use any gloves or towel or anything to hide his fingerprints on the weapon, and spends $41 for a pair of binoculars. If you've got a scope on the rifle, why do you need binoculars? The binoculars pin Ray to the bag because the binoculars are purchased by Ray and found in the bag. Then you got Ray driving off in this white Mustang. I mean, you might as well drive a damn red Ferrari through the center of town doing 100 miles an hour. And no one spots it all the way back to Atlanta. That's a good 6-hour drive, folks. I've driven from Atlanta to Memphis. 6-8 hours. That's a lot of counties, a lot of sheriffs, a lot of police driving through towns. There's no direct highway there. A lot of little sheriffs with their radios on the lookout for you, and no one spots him. He ends up getting arrested in London on a passport. He was supposed to be going to Rhodesia, and on a passport of that matched this George Raymond Schneed. I'm going to find that very. And Galt, who's also lived near Schneid in Canada, was from Rhodesia. So I find that very interesting. Also, I've read stories that Galt actually matches the description of this Raoul guy that Ray talks about, who's his contact down in New Orleans. Anyway, it's a very, very strange shit. And then Ray goes to trial. His attorney urges him to confess, okay? And then as soon as he confesses and is sentenced to 99 years, within a couple of days, he recants his confession, writes letters to the judges, and then the judge who convicted him dies in his chambers within 3 weeks, literally laying on top of the letters that Ray wrote to him, and had a heart attack and died laying on the letters that Ray had written him to recant his confession. So again, very, very bizarre, strange, and there's even more strange things that we're going to come across in this entire thing. Anyway, all right, take care. All right, bye-bye.